Welcome back to another episode of the You, Me, and Jesus podcast. I am so excited to be here with you today. And I just, first of all, just want to say thank you so much for listening. I have been, getting all your messages on social media, and then I've been seeing a little bit of reviews on iTunes. And so thank you so much for all that. It really it just encourages me so much when you choose to give reviews and tell me on social media. But also this is one of our very first episodes we're having on our new YouTube channel. So if you haven't subscribed to the You, Me, and Jesus YouTube channel, please do so. It's very, very, very new, but this is how you're able to kind of watch me in real time and also listen to me. So today we are talking about from the subject, what does forgiveness look like? I feel like forgiveness is like the F word that Christians don't enjoy using. That's just like some women don't enjoy using the S word, which is submission. But me today knows that the F word and the S word they're beautiful blessings. But until you really understand it, or you need forgiveness yourself, or you are submitting to someone who you're like, yes, they can lead. It's like, this is amazing. Until you have that experience, then you don't really know, it just looks bad. But we're not talking about the S word, we're talking about the F word, forgiveness. Okay. So when I think about the word forgiveness, so look, I'm going to actually do a Google search. So this is we're live with this. So if you're watching this on YouTube, where I'm typing into my computer while we're doing this. Okay. I went to Dr. Google and then the dictionary, it says the noun, the action or process of forgiving or being forgiven. Here's a sentence. She is quick to ask forgiveness when she has overstepped in the line. Now I'm going to click on a question that says, what is the true meaning of forgiveness? So this is what someone says. What is forgiveness? Psychologists generally define forgiveness as a conscious, deliberate decision to release feelings of resentment, or vengeance toward a person or group who has harmed you, regardless of whether they actually deserve your forgiveness. What a definition. 2 snaps for Dr. Google. Now I can only snap with one hand, but everything's fine. When I think about forgiveness, it's like a person has done something, or we have done something and we have to forgive ourselves or whatever, right? And whether they ask for forgiveness or not, we choose to forgive them. Why in the world would a person choose to forgive? I'm going to read to you from Dr. Google again, but we're pulling up the Bible. Okay. When I go to Google, here's the first thing that comes up is that be kind and compassionate to one another, forgiving each other just as in Christ, God forgave you. For if you forgive other people when they sin against you, your heavenly Father will also forgive you. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. So when you read that in contrast to what the psychologist says, is that we forgive people because God has asked us to do so. But he also says that if you forgive other people when they sin against us, then God will also forgive us. When I think about forgiveness, what does it mean? It's well, first of all, this, just the bare minimum principle is God says, hey, I want you to forgive. When somebody sins against you, I want you to forgive. And also, you forgive, and then I will forgive you. So I've been going, well, wait a minute. Does that mean until I ask them for forgiveness, he doesn't forgive me? What does that say? So I have in here where it says, what did Jesus say about forgiveness? Let me read this. Jesus taught, if you forgive others their transgressions, your heavenly Father will forgive you. Peter asked Jesus, how often is it necessary to forgive? And Jesus replied, 77 times, a number to be taken symbolically, not literally, for the never-ending way that we ought to forgive. If I'm reading this correctly, and we've all heard it in church, if I want to be forgiven, I have to first forgive. I was with a friend the other day, and she had somebody, I won't go into detail, but something crazy had happened. I mean, it just crazy happened. And as my friend is going through this healing, physical healing process, she goes to the hospital and she hears God say, so are you willing to forgive A, B, and C? And she said, no. And she was honest, right? She was like, no, I don't know. But she knew that he was asking her that because he was also inviting her to forgive. I remember when I found out that my ex was cheating, and early on, he never asked for forgiveness. He honestly never even admitted it, even though, all the things. I remember early on just sitting there at my in my couch, and I just knew, I was like, I have to forgive him. I literally have to forgive him. And I said, one, I was like, I have to forgive him because if I'm going to be able to reconcile, if he chooses to, ask for forgiveness or whatever, I have to like figure out how to forgive him. So I knew that. And so I was like, okay. But I also knew that the only way I was going to be able to make it, like one of the ways I was going to be able to make it, was if I forgave him. I didn't know exactly what that looked like, what that was going to feel like. It was just a knowing of like, I've got to forgive him for all these different reasons. And it was so hard. It was so painful because my ex was not apologizing. He was not apologizing. He was actually more mean than he was, apologetic, And I remember I had like my little notebook, and it was so hard to forgive him. And so I started writing lines in my notebook. And the lines I said was, God, help me to forgive even if he never apologizes. Because I was like, he might not ever apologize. And I was like, God, help me to forgive even if he never apologizes. I still have that journal because it was like, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this in my own strength. I just know it. I just can't. And I was like, I just wrote it, and I would like recite it every day. God, help me to forgive. And I would recite it every day, because I was aware that if I did not forgive him, then I would be hurting myself. I didn't know the depth of it, but I just knew that. I also remember years later, I had a session with someone who was mentoring me, and we were talking to God, and God was like, Keenya, you got to forgive the women he cheated on you with. And I was like, no. What? And then it like smacked me in the face. It was like, hey, guess what? You are harboring unforgiveness towards them too. You're harboring unforgiveness to the people who didn't come try to help you or call you or see how you were doing, just all this stuff. And it was like, I started to realize that like, when I think about forgiveness, that like, here is this beautiful life that we can live. It's beautiful. It's magical. It's not perfect, but it's beautiful. It's, and as people start hurting us or we get into situations, then it can start getting dark. And it's like, then it gets a little cloudy. Then it's like rainy outside. And it's just dark, as if it's like midnight. And, as I started thinking about my life, when all that was going on with my ex and all the type of stuff, life was okay. It wasn't awesome, but it was okay. And I was trying to, live this great life, just heal and all that type of stuff. And one of the things I realized was that life wasn't getting as beautiful as I wanted it to get until I was like allowing myself to have like the walls being broken down again, just letting light back in. And one of the ways I let light back in was through forgiveness, but also having to forgive myself. And oh my God, this was so painful, having to also ask for forgiveness for my ex-husband. Y'all gonna be like, what? Listen, I don't remember how many years later this was. Let me just say it was, where was I living? I was living in Houston. I would say it was 4 years later. Let's just say 4, I think 3 or 4, but I'm pretty sure it was like 4. I heard God say, I want you to write him a letter, and I want you to ask him for forgiveness. Forgiveness for what? I didn't cheat on him. He cheated on me repeatedly. And I just was like, okay. So I had my little notebook and was like, all right, for what? He goes, I want you to ask for forgiveness for everything you did against him. You did not cause him to cheat. That's not what happened here. I'm not talking about that. But what's all the things that you did? And when you were dating him, what's all the stuff? And when he said that, I was like, this is going to be a long letter. And I had like a legal pad. I think it was like a page and a half, 2 pages. I can't remember how long. It was long to me. It was pretty long. And I just started to write. I wrote his name and I said, hey, I was talking with the Lord and he told me that I needed to apologize to you for some things. I was like, I don't want anything from you. I'm not trying to get back with you. I want to do what God has invited me to do. And I just started writing. I'm sorry when the times when I said this. I'm sorry when I did this. And I'm sorry. And I was just like writing lines and I just like wrote it all out. It was very detailed. Like only he would understand all the stuff. And I just wrote it and wrote it and wrote it. And I put it in a sealed envelope. And then I put that envelope in open another envelope and send it to a friend. And I just said, hey, can you get this to such and such? I was like, it's not a mean thing or anything like that. God has just asked me to write this to him. Can you get this to him? And I don't know when he got it. I just remember I had a dream one night. And in that dream, I was with my ex. We were at a church or something. And at first he was sitting next to me. And then he got up and he was like his regular sized person in this really huge suit. So it was like he was so little, it just swallowed him. And I was just like, God, what does that mean? He goes, you released him. You that burden that he was carrying, you released him when you wrote him that letter. And I was just like in shock. But also, I think it was like a couple days later after I had wrote that letter out or something that happened, I had a dream about me getting a bunch of money. He was with me and I had to go into a locker and there was a bunch of money in a locker. And then when I grabbed the money out of a locker, I put it into a bag and he was there. So I handed him the bag and he walked me to my car, put it in my trunk, and then I drove off. And I was like, what does this mean? And the next day I got like $8,000 that came to me. The next day, I was like, and so for me, I feel like when I think about forgiveness is one, it's something God asks us to do, period. Two, it's something that heals and frees us. And then three, it heals and releases the other person, whether they know it or not. And more than anything, less about us or them. It's like, when I think about forgiveness, it's like, this is just something that God just asked me to do. And as much as this might be painful and something I don't want to do, that love and relationship with God looks like sacrifice. It looks like, here's this thing I don't want to do, but I will do it because I love you. And I also am learning the benefits of forgiving. Like I think about like what God did, Jesus did die on the cross. Like I wouldn't want to die on the cross for anybody, but he did that for us, right? And so because he sacrificially did that thing, we got something. And so because we sacrificially forgive people, whether they apologize to not, they get something and we get something, right? And we get that, staying in right standing with God and our love walk and all that. And then all the other things, like, I don't want it to sound kind of deep, but I'm like, okay, if God invites us to forgive, like he's like, this is the way to this is this. If we choose not to do this, then I'm pretty sure we're walking in disobedience. I'm pretty sure that means that if we're walking in disobedience and the enemy there could be a crack in the window. He's like, okay, well, she's not walking with him, so I can get in through. Not saying that 100%. I don't know that. I can't say that's like written out in the Bible that way. But, it reminds me of like when you have sex outside of marriage. I was married before, so sex is great. It feels great. All the things, right? But I'm reminded that when sex is awesome, we enjoy it. But when you have it outside of marriage, there is one, you're just not walking in purity and holiness and what God asks you to do. And then two, it opens you up to other things, right? It opens you up to potentially having a baby out of wedlock. It opens you up to soul ties, all this stuff. And it's like, I don't want to have a baby with a man that's not my husband. I don't want to have soul ties to a man who's not my husband, all this stuff or whatever. And so, because that's in disobedience, then that can happen when you have sex outside of marriage. And so I'm like, if I choose not to forgive, then that means I'm walking in disobedience. That's going to open me up to all this other stuff over here. And I'm like, I think it would probably behoove me to try to do it God's way. Does that mean it's easy? No, not whatsoever. It does not mean this thing is easy by any means, but it means that we can do it, because if God can do it, Jesus can do it, then we can do it too. So if you have anybody that you need to forgive, then my strong encouragement is make that list of who that is and start your journey of forgiving those people. Have a conversation with God about what does that look like? Ask him, does he want you reaching out to them? He may not want you to do that. So you got to obey what he's telling you to do. He told me to do that. I wouldn't have done that without him. So I'm just saying, I love Jesus, but you know what I mean? I wouldn't have done it without him. So it's really important for you to go, okay, God, Jesus, like, what do you want me to do? Who do you want me to forgive? Do I need to forgive myself? I've been on that journey for a while, is there somebody that I need to ask for forgiveness from? Because I guarantee you're going to have somebody where God's going to be like, yeah, you actually need to reach out to such and such. Like there was a girl, I owed her like $180 from like 10 years ago. And God was like, I need you to go send her that $180 and write her a letter. I sent her a message on Facebook and was like, hey, I owe you $180 from back in the day. Can I have your address? And she was just like, what? I was like, I need your address. And so I sent her a check, but I also wrote her a letter. I'm really sorry it's taken me so long, yada, yada, yada. Before that, God was like, you owe your daddy $1,800. I was like, Jesus, that's a lot of money. He goes, yeah, but you borrowed that. You owe him $1,800. And so I wrote him a long letter and was like, Daddy, I'm really sorry it's taking me so long to give you this money. Thank you for so much for giving it to me, yada, yada, yada. He texted me. He's like, oh my God, I needed that money so much to fix some things around my house because I'm trying to sell my house. You know what I'm saying? And so it's just like, it's not easy doing this stuff, but there's so many benefits to it. There's just so many benefits to it. So make a list of who the people that you need to forgive, including yourself, and then ask Jesus if there's anybody that you need to ask for forgiveness from.